Dear listeners, I welcome you to my channel. Leave your comments and impressions, I value your opinion. It's 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday night. The city is cloaked in the dim glow of twilight, the streets humming with the after-work rush. I'm sitting in our living room, staring blankly at the muted TV, a whiskey tumbler cradled in my hand. The news anchor's lips move silently, the subtitles flashing across the screen. Economic downturn affects small businesses, but my mind is miles away, fixated on the unsettling changes I've noticed in Susan, my wife, over the past few months. She's out again tonight. Work meeting, she had said, her eyes darting away from mine, avoiding my gaze. I knew she was lying. Her business trips and late-night meetings have become too frequent, her excuses too rehearsed. The scent of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes, the hushed phone calls in the other room, the sudden interest in her appearance, all glaring signs that something was amiss. As I swirl the amber liquid in my glass, my phone buzzes on the coffee table. It's a message from a private investigator I hired a few weeks ago. I unlock my phone, my heart pounding. She's with him again. Sending you the location. A photo follows. It's Susan, looking radiant in a red dress, sitting at a dimly lit restaurant with a man I've never seen before. Anger bubbles within me, but I swallow it down, forcing myself to stay calm. All right, Max, I muttered to myself, setting the glass down. Time to see this through. I grab my coat and keys, my movements deliberate. The drive to the restaurant is a blur, my mind racing with a mix of rage and heartbreak. I park a block away, not wanting to alert them to my presence. The investigator is good. He's already scoped out a vantage point for me, a spot where I can observe without being seen. Peeking through the window, I see them. Susan is laughing, her head tilted back, eyes sparkling in a way I haven't seen in years. The man reaches across the table, taking her hand in his. It's a knife to the heart. I snap a few photos with my phone, evidence to confront her with later. Just as I'm about to leave, something catches my eye. A man in a dark hoodie is watching them from the bar. There's something off about him, his eyes are cold, calculating. I feel a chill run down my spine. I decide to stay a little longer, my curiosity piqued. The man in the hoodie stands up, making his way towards Susan and her lover. He pulls something from his pocket, a small dark object. My breath catches. I move quickly, pushing through the restaurant door just as the man reaches their table. Susan's eyes widen in shock, and the man's face twists into a snarl. Before I can react, he lunges at Susan's lover, a knife flashing in the dim light. Chaos erupts. People scream and scramble away from the table. Susan! I shout, rushing forward. I grab the assailant's arm, trying to wrestle the knife away. He's strong, stronger than he looks, and we struggle for what feels like an eternity. Suddenly, there's a sharp pain in my side, and I realize he's slashed me. I cry out, my grit weakening. But then there's a loud bang. The man stiffens, his eyes wide with shock, and he crumples to the floor. I look up to see a security guard holding a smoking gun, his face pale. Call an ambulance, someone shouts. The restaurant staff and patrons are in a frenzy, dialing their phones, trying to help the injured. Susan is kneeling beside her lover, tears streaming down her face. John, oh God, John, please don't die, she sobs, pressing her hands to the wound on his chest. The world spins around me, the pain in my side throbbing. I sink to the floor, struggling to stay conscious. The last thing I see before darkness takes me is Susan's terrified face, her eyes locking with mine. When I wake up, I'm in a hospital bed. The room is bright, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. My side aches, and I can feel the tight bandages wrapped around my torso. Groaning, I try to sit up. Easy there, a voice says. I turn to see a nurse adjusting my IV. You've had a rough night. What happened? I croak, my throat dry. You were stabbed, she says matter-of-factly. You lost a lot of blood, but you're going to be okay. I nod slowly, the memories flooding back. The restaurant, the knife, the man in the hoodie, Susan and her lover. My heart aches, but I push the feelings aside. Where's my wife? I ask, my voice stronger now. The nurse hesitates, glancing toward the door. She's here. The police want to talk to you both. They've been waiting for you to wake up. My stomach churns with dread. The police? She nods, giving me a sympathetic look. I'll let them know you're awake. A few minutes later, Susan walks in, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looks at me, guilt and fear written all over her face. Max, I'm so sorry, she whispers, her voice trembling. I never wanted any of this to happen. Before I can respond, two police officers enter the room. One of them, a tall man with a stern expression, steps forward. Mr. Thompson, I'm Detective Harris. We need to ask you some questions about what happened last night. I nod, feeling a sense of foreboding settle over me. Of course. What do you need to know? Detective Harris pulls out a notebook, his gaze steady. Can you tell us everything you remember about the man who attacked your wife's companion? I recount the events as best as I can, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. When I finish, Harris nods, jotting down notes. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We have reason to believe that the man who attacked you is linked to a larger criminal organization. This wasn't a random act. My blood runs cold. What do you mean? Harris exchanges a glance with his partner. There's more to this than you know. Your wife and her friend were not the intended targets. We believe you might have been caught up in something far more dangerous. Susan gasps, her face pale. What are you saying? I'm saying, Harris replies, his tone grave, that your lives are in danger, and we need to find out why. As the weight of his words sinks in, I realize that this is just the beginning. The betrayal, the attack, it's all part of a much larger, darker puzzle. And somehow, I'm right in the middle of it. I lie back on the hospital bed, my mind reeling from the detective's words. The stark white ceiling tiles above me do little to calm the storm inside. Susan sits beside me, her face a mask of worry and regret. Detective Harris and his partner, Officer Lopez, wait patiently for my next move. I don't understand, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. Why would someone target us? Harris sighs, pulling a chair closer to my bed. We're still piecing that together, Mr. Thompson. But it seems your wife's affair might have inadvertently drawn some very dangerous attention. Susan's eyes widen. This is my fault. If I hadn't... No. I interrupt, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. We don't know that yet. We need to focus on finding out what's really going on. Lopez, a young woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, steps forward. We'll need to ask you both some more detailed questions, starting with how long this affair has been going on and any unusual events or encounters you've noticed in the past few months. Susan looks at me, seeking permission. I nod, and she begins to recount the timeline of her infidelity, her voice shaking. It started 6 months ago with casual encounters at her office. Her lover, John, was a colleague, someone she thought she could trust. I didn't realize he was involved in anything dangerous, she says, her eyes filled with remorse. I made a terrible mistake. Harris' expression softens slightly. It's not your fault that someone decided to use this situation to their advantage, but we need to figure out who and why. As Susan continues to talk, the door to my room opens, and another figure steps in. It's Dr. Emily Clark, my sister, a renowned neurologist at this very hospital. Her presence is a comforting surprise amidst the chaos. Max, she exclaims, rushing to my side. I just heard. Are you all right? I'm managing, I reply, grateful for her concern. Emily, this is Detective Harris and Officer Lopez. They're investigating what happened. Emily nods at them, her professional demeanor taking over. I've been briefed on your condition, Max. You're lucky the wound wasn't deeper, but you need to take it easy. I don't have time to take it easy, I protest. There's too much going on. She gives me a stern look, the kind only a sister can give. You're no good to anyone if you don't heal properly. Let the police do their job. I sigh, knowing she's right, but hating the helpless feeling. Harris takes this moment to interject. Dr. Clark, we appreciate your concern, but we do need to get to the bottom of this quickly. The sooner we understand what's happening, the sooner we can ensure everyone's safety. Emily nods, reluctantly stepping back. Just promise me you'll be careful, Max. I promise, I say, squeezing her hand. Thanks for being here. The room falls silent as Harris and Lopez continue their questioning. We discuss recent events in more detail, trying to pinpoint anything that might have triggered this violent encounter. Susan mentions a few instances where John seemed nervous or distracted, but nothing concrete. Then, Lopez's radio crackles to life. She listens intently before turning to Harris. We've got something. The attacker had a burner phone on him. Tech team managed to pull some data. Harris' eyes light up. What did they find? Lopez reads from her notes. A series of messages, very cryptic, but one stood out. It mentioned a meeting and a location. An abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. A sense of dread settles over me. What does that mean? Harris looks grim. It means we need to move fast. This could be where the larger operation is based. Susan's grip tightens on my hand. What should we do? You, Harris says, pointing to both of us, stay here. We'll handle this. But we'll need a contact number where we can reach you at all times. And it might be wise to consider protective custody until we know more. Emily interjects. I can stay with him. I'm his doctor, and I won't leave his side. Harris nods approvingly. That might be best. We'll station an officer outside the room as well. As Harris and Lopez prepare to leave, a nurse rushes in. Detective, there's a man here asking for Mr. Thompson. He says he has information about the attack. Harris and Lopez exchange a glance. Let him in, Harris says. Moments later, a disheveled man in his late 30s enters. His eyes dart around nervously, and he seems on the verge of panic. Are you Max Thompson? He asks, his voice trembling. Yes, that's me, I reply, curiosity piqued. Who are you? My name is David. I was a friend of John's. I know why he was attacked. Harris steps forward. You need to tell us everything you know right now. David nods, swallowing hard. John, he got involved with some dangerous people. He didn't tell Susan because he wanted to protect her. But they found out about their affair and used it to get to him. John owed them money. Lots of it. What kind of people? Lopez asks, her pen poised over her notepad. Criminals. Organized crime, David says, his voice barely of a whisper. They run a smuggling ring. Drugs, weapons, you name it. John got in over his head trying to make some quick money. My heart sinks. This is worse than I imagined. Why did they target us? I ask, struggling to understand. David looks at me, his eyes filled with guilt. They thought you knew something. They thought Susan might have told you. Harris' face hardens. We need to get to that warehouse now. David, you're coming with us. David nods, clearly terrified but willing to cooperate. As they leave, Harris turns back to us. Stay put, we'll be in touch. The door closes behind them, leaving us in a tense silence. Susan looks at me, tears brimming in her eyes. Max, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen. I reach out, taking her hand. We'll get through this, together. But right now, we need to trust the police and stay safe. Emily stands by the door, her expression resolute. I'll make sure nothing happens to you, Max. I nod, grateful for her presence. But as the minutes tick by, the uncertainty of what's to come weighs heavily on all of us. The shadows around our lives have only begun to unravel, and the true extent of the danger remains to be seen. The hospital room feels like a cage. Every tick of the clock on the wall grates on my nerves. Susan paces beside my bed, her anxiety palpable. Emily stands near the door, arms crossed, her face set in a determined mask. Outside, the officer stands guard, his presence a reminder of the peril we're in. We should hear from them soon, I say, trying to break the silence. The anticipation is killing me. Susan stops pacing and looks at me, worry etched in every line of her face. What if something goes wrong? What if those people? What if they hurt someone? We have to trust the police, Emily says firmly. Detective Harris knows what he's doing. Just then, my phone buzzes. It's a text from an unknown number. I unlock it to find a message from Harris. We're at the location. Sit tight. We'll update soon. I relay the message to the others, feeling a mix of relief and dread. The waiting continues, each moment stretching into eternity. Finally, after what feels like hours, my phone rings. It's Harris. Mr. Thompson, he says, his voice strained. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a development. My heart skips a beat. What happened? Is everyone all right? Just get here as soon as you can. We'll explain everything when you arrive. I hang up, feeling a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. We have to go to the station, I tell Susan and Emily. Emily helps me into a wheelchair and we make our way to the hospital entrance with the officer in tow. A patrol car is waiting for us. The drive to the station is silent, tension hanging thick in the air. When we arrive, Harris meets us at the entrance, his face grim. Thank you for coming, he says, leading us inside. We've got a lot to discuss. We follow him to a small, dimly lit room. Lopez is already there, along with David, who looks even more anxious than before. Harris shuts the door and takes a seat across from us. "What's going on?" I ask, the anxiety in my voice evident. Harris takes a deep breath. "We raided the warehouse. It was a bust. Whoever was running this operation cleared out before we got there, but we did find something important." He nods to Lopez, who pulls out a tablet and shows us a series of photos. My blood runs cold as I see images of the warehouse, including a wall covered in photos and documents. In the center is a picture of me, Susan, and even Emily, connected by lines and notes. "They were watching us," Susan whispers, her face pale. "Why?" David speaks up, his voice shaking. "They thought you had information that could expose their operation. John tried to get out, and they used your affair to blackmail him. When he didn't comply, they came after you." Harris nods. "David's been cooperating, and he gave us some names. We're starting to piece together who's behind this, but it's a complex web. These people are dangerous, and they won't stop until they get what they want." "What do we do now?" I ask, feeling overwhelmed. Harris leans forward, his expression serious. "We're placing you all under protective custody. We need to keep you safe while we dismantle this organization. It's the only way to ensure they can't get to you." The gravity of the situation sinks in. Our lives have been turned upside down, and there's no easy way out, but there's no choice. We agree to the plan, and Harris arranges for us to be moved to a safe house. The journey to the safe house is tense. We're escorted by several police vehicles, and the route is carefully planned to avoid any potential threats. When we finally arrive, it's a modest, secluded home surrounded by trees. The police secure the perimeter, and we're ushered inside. The interior is simple but comfortable, with enough space for all of us. Emily immediately checks my wound, ensuring the stress of the day hasn't caused any complications. "You need to rest," she insists, guiding me to a bedroom. "You're still healing." I lie down, exhaustion finally catching up to me. Susan sits beside me, holding my hand. "I'm so sorry, Max. This is all because of me." I squeeze her hand gently. "It's not your fault. We'll get through this, together." As the night wears on, I find it hard to sleep. Every noise outside, every creak of the house, sets my nerves on edge. Susan stays by my side, her presence a small comfort in the midst of chaos. Morning comes, and with it, a new sense of resolve. We gather in the living room, trying to make the best of our situation. Harris arrives with an update. "We've identified a key figure in the organization," he says, showing us a photo of a man with a cold, hard expression. "His name is Victor Costa. He's a known figure in organized crime circles. We believe he's the one who ordered the hit on John and targeted you." David looks at the photo and nods. "That's him. John mentioned him a few times. Said he was the one pulling the strings." Harris continues. "We're coordinating with other agencies to track him down, but he's slippery. In the meantime, we'll keep you here and monitor any communication they might try to send." Days turn into weeks as we stay in the safe house, cut off from the outside world. The police keep us updated, but progress is slow. The isolation is difficult, and the tension never really leaves. But we find ways to cope. Susan and I talk about our future. Emily keeps me focused on my recovery, and David, surprisingly, becomes a source of support, sharing stories of his past and helping us understand the criminal world we're up against. One evening, as we're having dinner, Harris bursts in, a triumphant look on his face. "We got him. Costa's been arrested. He was trying to flee the country, but we caught him in time." Relief washes over us. The nightmare is finally ending. "What happens now?" I ask, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Now we dismantle the rest of his operation," Harris replies. "With Costa in custody, his associates will start to fall. You'll need to testify, but we'll keep you protected. Your lives will slowly return to normal." It's a long road ahead, but for the first time in weeks, I feel a sense of peace. We face the abyss and come out the other side. Together, we'll rebuild and move forward, stronger than before. The safe house feels like a fortress, yet a fragile one. Despite the capture of Victor Costa, the sense of dread still lingers. We stay vigilant, knowing the criminal web we're entangled in won't unravel overnight. Harris and Lopez remain diligent, their updates a mix of small victories and ongoing investigations. One evening, as the sun sets and casts long shadows across the living room, my phone buzzes with an unknown number. I answer, and a voice I recognize chills me to the bone. "Hello, Max," says Victor Costa, surprised. I glance at Harris, who's in the kitchen. "How did you get this number?" I whisper, fear tightening my throat. Costa chuckles darkly. "You think I'm behind bars, don't you? Well, not everything is as it seems. I have friends in high places. You're still not safe." "Max, who is it?" Susan asks, her face pale. "It's Costa," I manage to say. Harris rushes over, taking the phone from my hand. "Costa, this is Detective Harris. How did you get this number?" Costa laughs again, his voice dripping with malice. "You'll find out soon enough. I'm closer than you think. Enjoy your last moments of peace." The call ends abruptly, leaving us in stunned silence. Harris immediately alerts his team, and the safe house goes into lockdown. The tension is palpable as officers secure the perimeter, and we're moved to a more secure room in the house. "Stay here," Harris instructs, his face grim. "We're not taking any chances." Hours pass like molasses, each one heightening the sense of impending doom. Emily checks my bandages, her hands shaking slightly. "We need to be ready for anything," she says, trying to maintain her composure. A sudden noise outside makes us all jump. Harris and his team move swiftly, guns drawn. We huddle together, waiting, hearts pounding. The sound of footsteps and muffled voices grows louder. The front door bursts open, and Harris' voice echoes through the house. "Drop your weapons, hands where I can see them." There's a scuffle followed by a series of gunshots. We hold our breath, waiting for the outcome. Harris returns, his face a mix of relief and concern. "We've got them," he says. "Costa's men tried to breach the house. They underestimated our preparedness." Susan sighs in relief, but I can't shake the feeling that something's still off. "Is Costa really behind this?" I ask. Harris nods. "It appears so, but there's one thing that doesn't add up. We found a message on one of the men's phones. It wasn't from Costa. It was from someone inside the force feeding them information." My blood runs cold. "Someone on the inside?" Harris nods grimly. "We need to root out the mole. But until then, you're not safe. We're moving you to a secure facility." The ride to the new location is tense. Harris and Lopez drive in silence, their eyes scanning for any threats. We arrive at a nondescript building heavily guarded. Inside, the atmosphere is sterile, clinical. "You'll be safe here," Harris assures us. "We'll find the mole and end this once and for all." Days turn into weeks, and life in the secure facility becomes a new kind of normal. Harris and Lopez work tirelessly, but the investigation seems to hit a wall. Then, one evening, Harris enters our room, a look of determination on his face. "We've identified the mole," he says. "It's someone very close to the investigation." "Who?" Emily asks, her voice barely of a whisper. Harris hesitates, then looks directly at Lopez. "It's Lopez." The room erupts in shock. Lopez steps forward, her face twisted with rage. "You have no proof," she shouts. "We have enough," Harris says coldly. "You've been feeding Costa's men information, endangering everyone here." Lopez reaches for her gun, but Harris is faster. He disarms her, and officers rush in to take her into custody. The betrayal stings, but the immediate danger is finally over. With Lopez in custody and Costa's network dismantled, we slowly begin to rebuild our lives. Susan and I attend therapy, working through the trauma and rebuilding our trust. Emily returns to her practice, her resilience a source of strength for us all. David surprisingly becomes a close friend, his insights into the criminal world invaluable to Harris' ongoing investigations. 1 year later, we stand in court, ready to testify against Costa. The proceedings are tense, but our resolve is strong. Costa glares at us from the defendant's table, his once powerful presence now diminished. The trial is long and arduous, but justice prevails. Costa is sentenced to life without parole. As we leave the courthouse, the sun shines brightly, a stark contrast to the dark journey we've endured. Susan takes my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "We did it," she says, a smile breaking through the lingering shadows. "We did." I agree, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But just as we're about to leave, a man approaches us. He's dressed in a suit, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson," he says, handing me a folder. There's something you need to see. I open the folder and freeze. Inside are photos, documents, and a letter. The photos show Harris and Costa shaking hands, smiling. The letter details payments and plans, implicating Harris as the true mastermind behind everything. No. I whisper, disbelief and betrayal washing over me. The man nods. Harris set everything up. He used Costa and Lopez as pawns. The real threat is still out there. The realization hits hard. Our nightmare isn't over. As we look around, the shadows seem to deepen, and the sense of safety we fought so hard for slips away. We need to go, Susan says, her voice trembling. I nod, gripping the folder tightly. The fight isn't over, and the true mastermind is still out there, lurking in the shadows. As we leave the courthouse, a new resolve takes hold. We will uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The battle for our lives and freedom continues, but this time, we're ready for anything.